Hi, everyone. Kumar Dattatreyan here with Agile Meridian, joined by Glenn Marshall, and we're continuing our series on the XSCALE framework, and we're up to letter L in XSCALE. And Glenn, what does that stand for?
Triple loop learning.
It's funny, it's not a T, right? Triple loop learning. I guess there's two L's that in the phrase, and it kind of outweighs the T, the triple. So triple loop learning, there's been probably many definitions of double loop learning, triple loop learning. In XSCALE, we define it a little bit differently than you might find on the internet if you search for triple loop learning. How does XSCALE define triple loop learning?
3 levels: workflow, team, and portfolio, a learning flow. So workflow, a team flow, and a learning flow across teams.
Okay, so if you talk about workflow, right? So workflow, it's a workflow to do what?
To deliver value. Even traditional organizations are, if you take a step back, even within a hierarchy, they're all about delivering value, perhaps from one silo to another, but still at the end of the day, they have to deliver value or they wouldn't be in business. One takes that notion and optimizes it, of course, visualizes the workflow, and has a number of practices to go and remove bottlenecks and so on and so forth. But really, that's just an optimization of a workflow that all organizations have, profit or nonprofit.
Yeah, so organizations, obviously they have a mission, right, to satisfy their shareholders, satisfy their constituents if they're a nonprofit, to deliver some value to them in some way, shape, or form. And so the first loop is just understanding the flow of value.
Yep.
From concept to value delivery, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Beginning to end.
And then the next level, if you will, you said was teams, right? And so lots of organizations have people, and in many organizations, they may be organized into groups that do some work together. How would you characterize a team from a group?
I would call them, they're both teams, but the critical notion when in Agile and in XSCALE is a cross-functional team, where rather than have a whole group of people that are doing the same role, you have a cross-functional team that is set up to deliver value, and all the different skills that are needed are on that team, and they work together cooperatively. This is much more efficient than the traditional hierarchy where work passes from one silo to another.
Right. So yes, the team is cross-functional, and I think size has an element to this, right? So teams cannot
Absolutely.
be, you can't call a team that's consists of 30 people a team, could you?
No, you can't.
That would be a group of people.
There's research on that. The guideline that I usually speak to is 4 to 8 with a sweet spot of 6. You can go a bit beyond that, particularly if there's some part-time team members, but you really want to have a core group of around 6.
Okay. So far we haven't really talked about anything more than what constitutes this triple loop, and we covered 2 of them. So one is understanding how value flows through the organization, ensuring that your teams are cross-functional, they're not too big. And then what's the third part?
The third part is learning flow. That is learning across the teams in a larger group. SAFe calls it a portfolio. The key notion here is that there's multiple teams doing work, perhaps working on a product. Steve Jobs was famous for absolutely capping the Macintosh team, the original Macintosh team, at 100 people. If the team needed another person, no problem, they would get it. They had to get rid of another one, so they never broke that 100-person limit. The reason Steve was so particular about that was because when you start to get beyond this, communication overhead goes down, and you just don't know everybody. There's a Dunbar number. Some people have claimed it's up to 150. That feels a bit high to me. Somewhere around 75 to 125. You don't want to go beyond that, because then everybody doesn't know everybody.
Yeah. The Dunbar number was coined by the anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who studied, he's an anthropologist who studied people, right, and how tribal society evolved, and he found that tribes rarely exceeded 150 people. And so that goes also, it's sort of, he extends the model to, he doesn't, but we do, certainly in XSCALE, extend the model to what's a right-sized portfolio. And while 150 is a theoretical limit, to your point, we try to keep our portfolios, if you will, or the number of people working on a product or a service to about 100, because it helps, to your point, again, limit the number of conversations that need to happen. People know each other. People know what other people on other teams are doing, and it helps the learning flow between teams.
Great. And if you start to push it at 150, then it's simple, split it. Then you have 275s.
Right. Not so simple though in actuality. I mean, we're struggling with that in one of the clients that I'm serving now. They have a and safe Scale Agile framework recognizes this as well. In fact, they talk frequently about the Dunbar number and how the Agile release train needs to be no more than 150. Mm-hmm. Maybe they need to go down to 100 or so. But anyway, so there are situations where the Agile release train is 200 people and we've got to split them, and that results in a lot of debate.
Yeah, how to split is a problem, but
how to split.
Exactly. There's a human reality when you get too big. The challenge is how to do it, but you got to do it.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about some of the key points of the triple loop learning. So we've got the learning flow, the workflow, how value flows through the organization, teams, how they're organized within a portfolio or Product line, and then the learning flow across the teams, which constitutes the portfolio. So how does this? Maybe we can touch on how this happens.
There's a point I would like to add first, and that is the workflow has to be end to end. You want to have everybody from where the idea comes in all the way to delivery. It needs to be the full life cycle, so all the people that are involved are on the team, and you have a complete conversation.
Right. So that makes sense, right? Certainly, if you have people that are not part of the portfolio but that are doing work in support of the portfolio, then this portfolio of teams, if you will, then that's a dependency outside of this group, and so it'd be hard for them to ensure that the learning that they're experiencing flows appropriately to the people that are outside of their team of teams. Exactly. So having everyone on the inside in that small ecosystem is important.
Yeah, and you want to honor their perspective, that they're doing something to deliver value. You want to work with them cooperatively as a team. They're doing something. It's obviously important, or they wouldn't be there. You want to honor their view and have the full end-to-end value.
Exactly. And so how does what are some of the other critical components that enables learning to flow?
People speak directly to one another. You need something from one person. You have something to share. You go directly. This is a critical notion. Managers are there to enable, but they're not communication conduits. You speak directly.
You mean that I don't have to go to my boss, and my boss doesn't have to go to his boss, and his boss isn't going to have to go to his boss, and so on down the line until somebody I need to speak to over there gets the message?
And then you run into the telephone game, because each layer introduces miscommunication inadvertently. It's just the way humans are.
Yeah,
we don't all hear everything. So yes,
that requires a big shift in how people lead and how people delegate responsibility and empower.
It does, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges in implementing Agile in the enterprise. How there is absolutely is a mindset shift. There is value in the hierarchy, but it's a different value in an Agile context. Rather than directing, it's about facilitating, creating a space where these conversations can happen.
Right. So it's really, to your point, is changing the mindset and what leaders and managers need to do and how they support the flow of information between teams inside of a portfolio.
Yep, and that's not easy. It's a mindset change, and it takes courage to let go, and it's a struggle for folks initially.
Right, and this is a pretty big topic, the triple loop learning. And so what we're really doing in this video is just covering the high level, the basis, if you will. And I think we're going to cut this into 3 parts. And so this part is really just introducing triple loop learning. And the next video, we're going to talk about a model that helps manifest this and other many of the other letters in the XSCALE set of patterns. And that model is called Camelot, the Camelot model. We will link to a video that Peter recorded, Peter Merrill, the founder of XSCALE, in here, so you can kind of get an idea what it is. But we're also going to come back and talk more about how teams convey information between one another. Glenn, do you want to say a little bit about what that is? Is it sort of a teaser?
It builds up. Spotify kind of touched on this with their chapters. Think of it as Spotify chapters with a coordination mechanism between the chapters. There's a teaser for you. The key thing is this works. There's actually a reference which we'll give where this has been practiced for many years. So that we're not breaking new ground here. But what we are doing is bringing something from the past that has worked and applying it in Agile. Frankly, I find this very exciting, and it's also kind of leading edge. There's not a lot of organizations doing this, but this is a powerful model.
Yeah, I agree. I would say just to add to that, Spotify has been around for a long time, and people make a lot of, we want to do the Spotify model. And Spotify has adapted. They've changed over the years, and they may not even call what they do the Spotify, maybe they do. But what we are referencing is the way they share information between chapters within the Spotify model. And what XSCALE has done is extend that to how teams share information between each other and how they make decisions. And it does take a certain amount of, I'm going to borrow Glenn's line, extreme empowerment of teams to be able to make those decisions. And so next time we meet, we'll be talking about the Camelot model. And then we're going to have a part 3 to this series on triple loop learning that will get into leadership as a service, how leaders and managers can enable this type of extreme empowerment.
In an efficient way. Make decisions. I would summarize it as make decisions quickly.
Yep. So hopefully you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and take a look at the video from Peter Merrill. It's really a great summary of the Camelot model. We'll come back in a couple of weeks, and we will sort of dissect the Camelot model in a little bit more detail. Any parting thoughts, Glenn?
Nope, but this is an exciting topic.
It is.
There really is some juice here, and some significant benefit for organizations who are willing to look at things a bit differently and try a new approach.
All right. Thanks for watching. See you all in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.